Where's a safe place for you to send your kids and grandkids where they can learn about Jesus and you know they'll be okay? We're going to tell you and introduce you to the owner next. Coming up live on The View.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome. 4 minutes after the hour on this gorgeous day in the midst of winter. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the Tuesday edition of The View from a Pew. Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat, watching the chat, and Father Tattoo in the production room today. Father Tattoo, can you do your best Elvis imitation? Because today would be Elvis's, what did we say, Bob, 78th 78-year-old birthday.
Born in 1935.
Yeah. So can you sing a little like Elvis?
No.
Well, try. Just the blue, 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 blue suede shoes.
Somebody's got to fix their headphones. No. I can't do any Elvis impersonations. I'm sorry, but Elvis has left the building.
Do you know who Elvis is?
I do. Suspicious Minds is one of my favorite songs.
Okay. All right.
But I cannot do an Elvis impersonation.
Do you ever think, does anybody else do Elvis? Al?
I don't do Elvis.
Bob?
No.
Do you think there'll ever be a day when there are, let's say, 5 people gathered around a table and the name Elvis will come up and no one will know who that is?
No, I don't think so.
Really? Never?
Well, I think eventually. I mean, I think we're a generation or two out still, but...
Everybody keeps them alive. That's the thing.
Well, you know, we don't have any precedent in this country or in this world because 150 years ago there was nothing being recorded. Okay, so we had nothing being recorded there, so we can't tell you who was the big singer of 1850.
That's a good point.
Right?
What?
Never mind.
Yeah.
You're of no value to me.
Well, I was fixing
You
your
can't
headphone
even
problem.
imitate Elvis.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, eventually.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Well, maybe you can find a little Elvis for us so we can honor
You
him.
want a little bit of Elvis?
A little bit of Elvis.
We'll maybe play some at the end of this.
Suspicious Minds.
There we go.
Well, he's also sung a lot of gospel, too.
Yes, he has. Yeah, maybe you could, since it's a Christian radio station, you could find a gospel recording
but
of Elvis.
Suspicious Minds kind of fits, too.
No.
Just a little bit.
No, not a lot. Not hardly
Not
at
even
all.
close.
Only if you want to lie
I'm kind of suspicious of what's
and
going to
make
happen.
excuses. All right, today we want to talk about put a smile on your face. And, you open the newspaper, you turn on the news tonight, and every time you turn around, there's more threats to our children and grandchildren. Whether it be the political threat of a fiscal cliff or whether it be the tragedy of schools in Connecticut or Aurora, Colorado, or wherever it is. And so it is important, I think, in this world to highlight those things that are safe for our children and grandchildren. Things that we know will not pollute their mind. In fact, will feed it with the love of Jesus Christ. The places they can go where you know your child isn't going to be exposed to horrible things like pornography and foul language, where they can go and learn not only about the ways of the world from a biblical worldview, but the ways of Christ through a correct biblical interpretation. Al Lorenzen is my guest today, and he has just such a place called Wildwood Hills Ranch down in St. Charles, Iowa. I'd say down. Is that right? Down?
It is down. We're
It is down.
south of West Des Moines, absolutely.
Okay. Al, welcome.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And a lot of folks that are my age would remember Al as being the. Were you an All-American?
I was mediocre.
No, you were an All-American.
I was a high school All-American
Okay, high school All-American, and then starter at Iowa State.
at Iowa.
I'm sorry, Iowa. I'm sorry.
At this point, it doesn't really matter.
Well, see, I'm from
Hey, no, that makes me like him a whole lot better
because he's Iowa.
because he's Iowa.
Okay. Well, I've never understood you people in Iowa with your two team anyway. So, because I'm from the state that produced the greatest football team ever.
Really?
College, pro, high school, it didn't matter.
I had no idea you were from Iowa.
They produced the greatest football team ever.
And which state is that?
The ones with the most pompous and arrogant fans that you can find.
Next to Iowa City.
The other way, Nebraska.
Nice.
Yeah. So when I moved here from Nebraska in '78, it was like Iowa and Iowa State. Well, what do you people do? You have to choose.
Well, yeah, Nebraska, it's big red or nothing.
That's right. That's right. And I've always found Iowa State fans to be nicer.
Yeah, that's
what it's
true.
worth.
As a Hawk, I say that all the time. It is what it is.
Now, you played basketball in Iowa City when?
84 to 88.
All right. And under what coach?
I was 2 years under. I actually committed to Lute Olson. He left. I scared him off. Played for Tom Davis, or played for George Raveling my freshman and sophomore year. Scared him off, and then played for Tom Davis my junior and senior year.
You just kept scaring them off.
That's my story.
And do you still play a little pickup?
I do not. I've got an 11-month-old and a 4-year-old, and then I have a 16-year-old daughter in Iowa City. So the kids right now, that's my schedule.
Yeah, I understand that. I've got 5 grandkids in that range.
Keeps you busy.
And so when you got done playing basketball in Iowa, what made you go to, I mean, seriously, dude, what made you go to a horse ranch in southern Iowa?
Yeah, we joke about that all the time. I'm a city kid, and I'm running a 400-acre ranch that works with 1,000 at-risk youth a year from all over the state. We're faith-based, as you mentioned. The only help that works with these kids is the love of Jesus Christ, and we have the privilege of bringing that and sharing that with these kids throughout the summer, but then throughout the year as well with some of our programming. God brought me there, Mac. It was a case where through growing up with my dad in a situation that was less than ideal, and as a matter of fact, I'm working on a book with Ken Fusen right now talking about the sports background, about growing up the way I grew up in Cedar Rapids, and about kind of this process of how God equipped me and then put me at Wildwood Hills Ranch. But the reality is I started getting engaged in a lot of athletic-related administration. I worked at Drake Athletics, the Drake Athletic Department as Director of External Affairs. I ran the Des Moines Sports Commission. I was on the board of directors for Wildwood Hills Ranch, and the board made a decision to hire a CEO. They were going to decide. It was time. The ministry has been in existence for 10 years. We've grown and gotten to the point where we have to have some infrastructure to sustain the ministry, and so they started talking about a CEO. I made the good fortune, the mistake one day of saying, wow, that sounds like an incredible opportunity. And next thing I know, I'm a candidate. And when I look back.
Keep your mouth closed around the board table.
Exactly. I missed a meeting, and that's what happened. When I look back on it, it took 6 months really for me to get comfortable with it and for the board to really decide that's the direction they wanted to go. And with my accountability guys through that, what really bubbled up is I had over a decade of fundraising experience in a network here in Central Iowa from my time at Des Moines, at Drake, and my time at the Sports Commission. I've managed events and run all kinds of events, and had a passion for kids and trying to impact their relationships going forward, and a heart for the dysfunction that comes when a father doesn't step up and accept his responsibility. And really, when you look at, we sat down with our program director, and the consistent element with our kids is either dad's not in the mix, or dad, if he is in the mix, he's messed it up so bad that these kids are left broken. And Mac, what we really are at Wildwood Hills Ranch is we're fathers to the fatherless, first and foremost. And that was really consistent with what God was calling me to do, and to step in and be fathers to the fatherless. We do that down there to the tune, as I mentioned, of about 700 kids a year in our summer core programming. And then we do another couple hundred kids through equine-assisted learning, equine-assisted therapy. We have 30 horses down there. And Max, something we do that's unique, because there's a lot of great people doing great work with kids. We make a 10-year commitment to the kids. We have a network of community partners from around the state of Iowa, over 60 of them that refer the kids to us.
Hold on, you mean a 10-year commitment to each child?
Yes.
Wow.
So ideally, our community partners understand we want the kids that are the most broken, that are in that frankly the system can't handle. And our kids, they're the ones that get medicated and get brushed aside, and just so they don't act up, just so they don't interrupt what's going on in their school settings. So they're the ones that get lost in the shuffle, and statistically, they're the ones that are going to be incarcerated. They're the ones that are going to end up repeating the cycles that they've seen modeled for them. So we work with our community partners. They refer a child to us between the ages of 8 and 10. They need to be 8 years of age or older and younger than 10. That's the first time that we work with a young person. And then we stay with them. We allow them to keep coming back as long as they meet the obligations until they're 18.
Why 8 to 10? I mean, there's got to be a reason for that 2-year period.
Well, over the 10 years we've been doing it, we understand that 8 is about the cutoff in terms of where we can really start to impact a child. I mean, underneath that, they're very difficult to administer.
They're very adolescent.
Yeah, being away from their parents for good significant amount of time. We're not a residential facility, but we have kids with us for up to half a summer. So 8 was a natural cutoff, and then 10 on the other end. None of us want to admit this or understand this in the state of Iowa, but by the ages of 10, that's when you start being impacted by the substance abuse and other things. The gang world starts rearing its ugly head, and you have some of the behavioral issues, and you're seeing violence manifest itself in these 10-year-old kids because that's what they see reflected around them. So the reality is, for us to be most effective, we need to get them before they're 10, and we can really get them before they're addicted to something, before they're in a gang, before they're pregnant, any of the things statistically that this population is going to experience.
Al Lorenzen is our guest today. He is the CEO of Wildwood Hills Ranch. That's about 35 miles south of West Des Moines, down in St. Charles. You can hook up with those folks at wildwoodhillsranch.org. Now, as you sit here and explain that to me, it sounds to me that that's probably a minority-driven program.
There are a fair amount, but one of the things, Mac, that is, I shouldn't say it surprised me because I was on the board for a couple of years before taking over. You know what we see, the abuse that our young people endure, obviously it's easy to point to metropolitan areas and heavy minority population areas. The reality is what occurs in rural Iowa is every bit as horrendous as what you're seeing in the urban areas. It's just hidden better. It's just if you're 2 miles down a country road, nobody knows what's going on. Whereas in many of the urban areas, many of the metropolitan areas, the violence of children are being abused. There's a higher chance that it's going to be reported or uncovered. So I won't, our population skews, we're about 60-40 minority to white.
Oh, that surprises me.
And
it'd be higher.
Well, and I guess so did I when I first started getting involved with Wildwood Hills Ranch. But the reality is, and again, people that live in Iowa want to believe, and it is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. But what we see happen, the breakdown of the family unit, which obviously you're very familiar with, to me it starts with men not leading, not accepting a biblical definition of masculinity and not modeling that in their homes and in their communities. That's really what this boils down to. And what we see with the kids that we serve, there's 27,000 children in the state of Iowa considered at risk. Now, there's a variety of factors there. There's our children, almost half of them are the victims of abuse, sexual, physical, mental, emotional, all different types. When you really look at the 27,000 kids that fall into that category, there's socioeconomic factors and other things. But the reality is they're kids that do not have that family unit modeled. And many of us that believe in the American ideal of, hey, you can be anything you want to be in this country. You can, as long as you can dream it, you can achieve it. These kids really need to have a playing field leveled, and that's really what we do. We teach these kids how to be leaders. From 8 to 12 years of age, Mac, they all the curriculum is about loving them, building relationship, letting them know there's a safe place they can go. And I can share more about what happens as they get older, but that's the foundational part. From 8 to 12 years of age is really where we begin to build that relationship.
All right, hold that thought right there. We'll come back and we'll continue to talk about this. Remember, these are not just kids from 6th and Forest. These are kids that are going to your Lutheran church, your Catholic diocese, in Boone, Ames, Fort Dodge, Carroll, Des Moines, West Des Moines. Al Lorenzen is in the house, CEO of Wildwood Hills Ranch. We'll continue this conversation and celebrate a little Elvis, as today the king would have been 78 years old.
Saw an angel working on it. the chariot wheel. Wasn't so particular about the chariot wheel. Just wanted to see how a chariot feel. Don't you sway down the chariot started.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour, our special guest today, Al Lorenzen, the CEO of Wildwood Hills Ranch down in St. Charles, a place that at-risk children from around Iowa go to learn about Jesus. And they don't hide anything down there. It is not a non-denominational. Well, wait, it is non-denominational.
Yep.
But it is Christian.
Absolutely.
And talking about some of the programs that we have down there for the kids. And what's your passion behind this? What really motivated you to do this?
Well, my passion, again, is coming back to my relationship with my dad. And, we grew up middle class in Cedar Rapids. I mean, on the northeast side there. And by all outward appearances, you had a kid that achieved in athletics and received a lot of recognition and a lot of accolades. But the reality is, I grew up with an abusive dad, alcoholic mom, and not that that's the end of the world, but it impacts you.
Absolutely.
And on this journey through life, you realize, as I started looking at some of my behaviors and some of the things that I was, how I was leading my life, obviously pre-Jesus and even after Jesus, Mac, in all honesty, there was a lot of baggage there. And part of my journey here, leading me to Wildwood Hills Ranch, was starting to come to grips with that, going through and starting to really unpack. I'm not a prisoner of my past and the way I grew up, but certainly it has impacted me and predisposed. And a lot of guys, a lot of men in particular, don't want to wrestle with this stuff. They don't want to, oh, I can handle it. Oh, yeah, it was rough, but, I'm okay. And they don't realize that you've got to, to deal with this stuff, you've got to be deliberate and intentional about it. And whether it's a program like Quest for Authentic Manhood, whether it's accountability guys, whether it's therapy, whatever it is, and I work with guys now all the time. And there's three elements that we tell them. It's fellowship with other believers, and who you hang around with is important.
Yeah.
And obviously being in the Word, and then having a healthy prayer life. But my dad growing up, he was doing the best he could. He was a smart guy, West Point undergrad, University of Chicago MBA, and never got past entry-level engineering position at Rockwell International because he couldn't get along with people. So he's just an angry guy, a guy that was angry all the time. And that anger actually is what propelled me to become a good basketball, to become a high school All-American. I was trying to please my dad, and so there wasn't anything I wouldn't do, whether it be just effort or time or anybody I wouldn't step on to achieve those things to try to make my dad happy. And, that you compound that with my mom going through rehab twice, and finally the second time she stayed sober the last 18 years of her life. But
wow, that's awesome.
Praise God. But when you look at all those things, and then as a dad, looking at my 16-year-old daughter who's a junior in Iowa City, and now I have an 11-month-old son and a 4-year-old son here with my current wife. When I got divorced, and I got divorced because I was unfaithful to my first wife, and so. When I was wrestling with this, when I started dating my current wife, Barb, and it really brought it to a head, and that's what opened the door to me to even accept Jesus in the first place, was to, I want to marry this woman, or I got to quit dating her, because the relationship was at that point. I can't make a marriage work without God. And I was a non-believer at the time, and God dropped that on me. I can't make it work. I've already tried it without God. I've already tried it with me being in control, and we crashed and burned. I'm not going to do that again. So that's what even opened the door for me. And since that time, it's, okay, how can I be the best father and the best husband I can possibly be? And how can I learn from what my dad did and not repeat that cycle with my kids? And that's really the journey God's had me on. And when I got to a point in that journey where I think I was comfortable and transparent enough with being able to share those kinds of things, then and only then did God kind of put the Wildwood thing in my path and say, here's an opportunity for you to really serve and for you to impact a lot more kids than just your own.
Isn't it amazing? Al Lorenzen is our guest today, CEO of Wildwood Hills Ranch. Isn't it amazing that God really does prepare us?
Yes, he does.
For what he wants us to do. And if we would have said, if someone were to tell us in the middle of our trials, you have an alcoholic mother because God is preparing you for something. You have, Mac, what you have to go through because God is preparing. Baloney.
Yeah. I don't want to be in the desert. Get me out of the desert. Yeah.
That's right. But
Mac, when I sorry to interrupt because it's your show, but when I was contemplating this position at Wildwood, I started reflecting back. I have never applied for a job. 16 years old, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm in EB Sporting Goods shopping for a pair of basketball, because that's when you're a jock and you're 16. That's what you do. You go buy gear. The manager of the store says, "Hey, how'd you like a job?" Sure. Do I get a discount? There we go. You fast forward every opportunity that I had. Drake Athletics. I wasn't looking for a job. Lisa Stone and Kirk Kanaski came to me and said, "Hey, we've created a director of external affairs position. Would you apply?" I said, "No, I have a partner in a business. I'm not interested." One thing led to another. I end up anyway. The reality is I never applied for a job, and when I reflected back, I had fundraising experience. I had event management experience. I had decades of team building experience. God had prepared me, starting with my occupations, even before I knew who Jesus was. And that, when I came to that realization, and some of my accountability guys, as we're praying through that, he said, what an incredible, miracles for me are a process. It's not the sky opens and right. Dove descends, although that's great. For me, it's just been a process. Even before I knew who Jesus was, he was preparing me for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just amazing when we get to sit back and take a look at our lives at 30,000 feet and realize, he was right there. Yeah. Oh, he was there. Because that wouldn't happen without, oh my heavens.
Yep.
Al Lorenzen is our guest today. Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat, watching the chat. Anything exciting happening on that big ball of chat there?
No, not much chat going on.
Okay. Father Tattoo, of course. I don't know who he's talking to. Probably Elvis.
Maybe himself.
He's in here. Now, I do want to put a shameless plug in for our church for just a minute, because some of the instruction that you went through, the accountability partners that you found, the classes that you took as a man, we offer those at Hope.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm not trying to do a shameless plug, but you're out there listening, and you're going, oh, I wish my son or my husband, or I wish I could find that type of adult instruction, because you usually only find that type of instruction in Sunday school. Well, our church at Hope has all kinds of classes just like that. And the one you mentioned was Quest for Authentic
Manhood.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The men's fraternity series. And Mac, there's Quest for Authentic Manhood, there's Winning at Work and at Home, and there's The Great Adventure. And you talk about life-changing. There's a lot of things that God put it together to really shape me. But that's Quest for Authentic Manhood is about one very simple thing, understanding what a biblical definition of manhood is and applying it to your life.
Yeah.
And how many guys couldn't benefit from that? The question is, where do you find it? And, and what's well, the reality is Lutheran Church of Hope is doing it. It's an international ministry now. So I would challenge somebody to find a community in North America or beyond that isn't offering that in some way, shape, or form. Here in Des Moines, not only are places like Lutheran Church of Hope offering that curriculum, the YMCAs in Des Moines are offering that curriculum.
Wow.
And I've spoken at kickoff meetings for them on different Quest sessions. It is a phenomenal thing. We're getting ready to I took my male staff members at Wildwood Hills Ranch through Quest last year, and it so impacted them. We're now running a pilot. We're doing it with some of our, what we call leaders in training, our 13 to 15-year-old boys that are in our program right now. We're taking a group of them through it here starting this winter. So it is life-changing curriculum.
And I don't know how to say this with as much impact as I mean, but you understand the impact that you're having on those 13 to 15-year-old boys.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely generational changing.
Well, here's an example. I'll use a couple anecdotes of success stories with Wildwood Hills Ranch. We have a young man, Aaron Kiernan actually did a story on him last fall during Sweeps Weeks, Cordell Jordan. Cordell's a Des Moines kid, never been out of Des Moines other than to come to the ranch. Cordell's mom, one of multiple siblings, one of, I believe, 11 siblings. Cordell's one of 9 siblings. You've got a pretty, let's just say, non-traditional family tree across the board. This is a Des Moines family growing up here. When Cordell came to us when he was 10 years old, got kicked out the first week for fighting, knocked a 12-year-old out cold. As a 10-year-old, that just shows you the anger and the violence in his life. Cordell came back. Every kid at Wildwood gets a second chance. Cordell came back, stuck with it, ended up finishing our program. At 17, he's graduating from high school, and our program director, Matt, went to the high school graduation, and Cordell's mom is there with a blue finger, one of those foam fingers like you see in the stands. Yeah. Matt's, trying to figure out, he says, it's not really that kind of event. And she says, no, you don't understand. She starts breaking down crying. She said, he's the first one. Well, what do you mean he's the first one? He's the first male in our family in this generation or the generation before to graduate from high school. And furthermore, he's the first male in our family to not be incarcerated at the age of 17.
Wow.
I mean, so you feel good about that. You say, okay, wow, God is really working here. But here's where you start talking about something we take a lot of energy from, and that's community transformation. Cordell's got 3 younger siblings. One of them has already come through our program, has graduated from high school, and along with Cordell has taken college classes. The 2 next younger ones are on track to do that. So, Mac, not only do we step in and did God work in Cordell's life, Cordell's going to be going to Grandview next year to play football and works at the Grub YMCA, is on summer staff with us. Just an amazing story. But his 3 younger siblings, Cordell is determined that they're not going to live the cycle that his uncles and his mom and their parents did. That's where you start talking about community transformation, and that's what's really exciting in our mind. We celebrate the Cordells of the world, but what we celebrate even more is when we train up Cordell, when we share God's love and God's word with that young man, what he can do in his community that we could never do as staff. I could, as a white guy from the suburbs, there's only so much that I'm going to do in the world that Cordell grew up in. Mm-hmm. Cordell, however, can get it done.
How do people find you, your camp, or how do you find them?
Our community partners. We have a couple points of entry, and as I mentioned, as I was earlier before break, we have community partners that refer the kids to us. They move into what we call our Ranchers program. So, and that's primarily a summer thing. We have those kids, the 8 to 12-year-olds, for 1 week in the summer. Now, we're not naive. We're not going to solve a kid's problems in 1 week in the summer. What we know is we can give them love, and we can build trust with those kids. And that's the foundation for what's going to happen in the future years. At 13, they move into what we call our Leader in Training program. They get 12 principles of leadership focused on teaching them how to be leaders. So we're going to convince you can be whatever you want to be. We're going to convince you that God, we're going to share with you, and there's not much convincing to it, that God, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. God created you unique in His image, and you can be that American dream, that ideal that we talked about earlier. You can be whatever you want to be. So the first 4 years are really establishing that and that foundation and the love and the trust needed for them to believe that. At 13, well, we better start equipping you. If we're going to tell you can do anything you want to do, you're going to need some skills that you're not going to get in the schools, that you're not going to get at home. That's where leadership, the 12 principles of leadership, and the best example I can give that really hit me, one of the leadership skills we teach is initiative. Well, the guys in this studio probably didn't need to have anybody teach you how to demonstrate initiative. You saw it in models, you saw it all around you. Our kids have not seen that. That's an example of how you level the playing field. So what does it mean to show initiative? What do people, everything in our world boils down to, what do you see leaders who are showing initiative, what do you hear them saying, and what do you see them doing? That's what we teach our kids how to, so they can begin to adopt those things and begin to understand them. So 13 to 15, that's part of the empowerment process. Then at 16, and how Cordell and kids like him can go on and do what they've done out in the community, we then give them another 12 principles of leadership from 16 to 18 on how to lead youth and how to impact others around you.
Well, they're not riding horses year-round, so how do the Wildwood Hills Ranch impact these kids the rest of the year? CEO Al Lorenzen will be back, and we'll talk about that as we celebrate Elvis's 78th birthday today with Father Tattoo's favorite Elvis song.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Fight the good fight on a Rebels Cause Radio, Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on a rebelscause.com. A Rebels Cause Radio is edutainment.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting him by faith, what he did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
We're the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
22 minutes before the top, Salem Radio Network News, and then Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue this afternoon, along with Chris Roloff. That's this afternoon at 4:03 right here on The Truth. 99.3 KTIA. Hey, this reminder, our January meeting of Testify is tomorrow. Usually it is the first Wednesday of the month, but given the fact that the first Wednesday of this month was the 2nd of January, we decided to wait until tomorrow. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun, a lot of great prayer, a lot of good fellowship. It happens at Incredible Pizza, starting at 11:30. Please be there by noon. And Tom Clegg, C-L-E-G-G. If you don't know Tom, he's been on this program on a regular basis. He's the one that has the 5 things that are true to every successful church. Yeah, you remember those conversations we had. Well, Tom is going to be there to give his personal testimony, and so we look forward to that. That's tomorrow. Testify. If you're on Facebook, check it out on Facebook. And if you need more information, feel free to go and to my website and look it up there, macsworldlive.com. Tom Lorenzen is my guest today. He is a former Iowa basketball start. Did pretty well over there. How many points did you score while you were over there?
You know, that's a really good question. I couldn't tell you.
Really? I figured, man, you'd know right away.
No, I can't. I run into people all the time that remember more about that part of my life than I do.
Yeah, I would imagine. But what a great place to play, Carver Hawkeye.
Absolutely. A lot of fond memories. And you know, I'm excited, Matt, because I've got my daughter who's a 16-year-old junior at Iowa City High, just committed to the University of Florida to play basketball down there.
Oh.
So she was actually born in Orlando and has family down there. And so we're excited that she's going to have the opportunity to experience some of that same fun stuff that I did.
Is that a big women's program? I don't know.
It is. It has been historically. They were in the tournament last year, and
Okay.
we would expect them. The coach is in her 3rd year, so she has kind of taken it and gotten it back on track.
Is your daughter blessed with your height?
She's 6'3".
Wow.
And yeah, and in a women's game that's, you know, athleticism is a premium. She's 6'3". She can dunk a tennis ball already, and she's getting close to. She's dad. By the time I'm done with high school, I'm going to be able to dunk, and she's close to being able to get a volleyball down. So she's fun to watch.
Good, and you're proud of her.
Absolutely.
Al is the CEO of Wildwood Hills Ranch down in St. Charles. It's wildwoodhillsranch.org if you want to look it up. Now, we've talked about all these ways that you impact these youth. Is this just boys or boys and girls?
Boys and girls. And we've talked a lot about the summer programming. And as I went through the various age groups and how we break them down, you know, the young kids are with us for a week. The 13 to 15-year-olds are with us for multiple weeks. And the 16 to 18-year-olds typically are with us for at least 5 weeks in the summertime. And then the 13 to 18-year-old group come back once a month throughout the winter for what we call bounce backs. And to your point earlier, we have an indoor riding arena. So the 30 horses that we have do get used year round. And we're getting ready to expand we're planning right now to break ground on a greenhouse here this spring that will allow us to do our agricultural programs on a year-round basis as well. So it's a 400-acre facility, 12-acre lake. We have the first elevated team confidence course in the state of Iowa that our kids use and that we have outside groups come down and do team building on. We've got bunk space for about 180 right now. We're in the middle. We've just broken ground on a new $1.5 million dining facility that'll have 5,000 square feet of new dining space and kitchen and another 5,000 square feet above that of bunk space. So a lot going on right now, and it's just exciting to see what God's doing through Wildwood Hills Ranch.
Do you live on the property or does somebody else?
I don't. We do have a staff person that lives down there, but I live actually up here north of Des Moines.
Okay. Now, this isn't cheap.
No, it's not.
I mean, how do you get? I mean, the families of these kids, they don't have the means.
Right? The kids don't pay a nickel to come and do what we do. What we do typically, Mac, is obviously fundraising. I tell people I didn't have any gray hair before I started doing this job and raising the money. We're a little less than $1 million a year budget, and all of that is privately raised. We don't take government funding, and with the exception,
you couldn't because you're faith based.
Well, we could, and if we wanted to jump through their hoops. And we, it's interesting because while we are faith-based, we're non-denominational. The AG has signed off on it. We actually received a Vision Iowa grant a few years ago, and there wasn't any strings on the front end as we got into it. The strings that did manifest themselves were such that we ended up giving back or not accepting the $600,000 grant, the Vision Iowa money, for that very reason. But we work very closely with DHS. They're the largest single referrer of kids. Now, that's kind of an interesting. DHS started out 10 years ago using us as respite care. So, they would say their caregivers, the foster parents, needed a break, so they'd send the kids to the ranch for a week. Then a funny thing happened, and they started seeing how the kids were transforming as they came back, and the more time they spent with us, wow, their grades are going up, they're not getting in trouble, they're spending more time and doing positive things and becoming leaders. So now DHS is one of our biggest fans, and they can get away with working with us because they're not funding us. We're the ones going out and finding the dollars. Right. So if you're a DHS worker and you want to refer a kid to Wildwood Hills Ranch, it doesn't cost anything. So we have events that raise funds for our programs, and then we go into communities around the state. We do events in Dubuque, in Waterloo, and in the Quad Cities. And the goal is for the kids coming from that area, for each community, to help us raise enough dollars to fund what we need to for those kids. But for an 8 to 12-year-old for 1 week is close to $900 in hard numbers. So, and then you throw in all the year-round activity, and it's an expensive proposition.
And this is funded privately.
Yes, the only public money almost all of our kids are free and reduced lunch kids. So we do get reimbursed from the state for the meals that we feed those kids that qualify for free and reduced lunches, and we have to meet all the nutrition requirements for that program. And then we receive some DCAT money, which is an extension of DHS, that are grants to do equine-assisted learning for some learning disabled and some behaviorally challenged kids in the I-35 Winterset schools and even a few from Polk County. So the equine-assisted learning, I'm a city kid. I know what end the hay goes in, and I know what comes out the other end of these things, but I knew absolutely nothing about horses. And it's fascinating because it's intuitive for us to say, you put a child on a horse that's been told they're not going to amount to anything, they're worthless, they're no good, they've been abused, they've been discarded in many cases, and then you put them on a 1,400-pound animal, and you watch them bond with that animal, and you watch them begin to control and get to do some pretty incredible things with that animal, and you can just see them, you can physically see them swell up with pride, and you can physically see them begin to say, you know what, if I can control this critter, I can do some of this stuff. So we get to see that happen, but then you get to see, we work with folks that are all the way from disabled to, in terms of paraplegic or quadriplegic to brain injured people. And we've got a young lady that we work with who had been in a car accident, and it sounds silly. My first day at the ranch, I walked down to the barn to see what was going on, and they've got this young lady, obviously special needs, on a horse with a wiffle ball bat. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we doing here? And our equestrian director says, hey, can you throw? I said, well, sure. He says, well, pitch to her. So I start pitching wiffle balls to this young lady. She's 17 years old. Prom night, boyfriend gets drunk, wraps the car around a tree. Boyfriend walks away. She ends up confined to a wheelchair the rest of her life. And she's hitting wiffle balls with a wiffle ball bat. And I'm,
on the back of the horse?
Yeah, on the back of a horse. And afterwards, I said, okay, help me understand what we're doing here. He said, well, when she came to us, she could barely, hold herself up. She had no abdominal muscle. She had no core strength. She wouldn't go out of the house. She would just lay around all day. Now, by coming and doing the equine-assisted therapy, she's out and about more than she's in the house. She's got core strength, so she can effectively use her wheelchair and some of the other things she has. She's gotten balance through activities like hitting a wiffle ball at the back of a horse. She's got balance so she doesn't fall. She's not injured as much. She's able to lead as productive and as engaged a life as she possibly can. And that's something I had no concept of. And she gets a healthy dose of Jesus along the way. And when you look at all those things, it's just an incredible thing to watch happen each and every day.
Al, do you have like a waiting list, or is that a problem?
Yeah, the reality is we're in a line of work where there's no shortage of customers, and that's a bad thing. In a perfect world, we'd put ourselves out of business. As I mentioned earlier, there's 27,000 kids in this state considered at risk. We work with 1,000 of them. That's a staggering proportion when you think about it.
Yeah, you could work with 1,000 a year and not fulfill the need until 27 years goes by. Al Lorenzen is our guest, CEO of WildwoodHillsRanch.org. How can you help? How can you help? How you can help. We'll talk about that next, live here on The Truth. 99.3 KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Have you ever been told you're not good enough to be a Christian? Well, we have too. Join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 10 before the top. Salem Radio Network's news at 4 and then 4:03. True Blue with Pastor Michael Mudloff right here on the Truth Network. 99.3 KTIA, powered by WebcastOneLive.com. Tomorrow, Will Rogers in the house with Tom Coates, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, the feelings that some Americans are having over Chuck Hagel being nominated as Secretary of Defense, when in so many cases he seems anti-Semitic and in favor of what's going on with Hezbollah and Iran and some things like that. One guy, I'm embarrassed to say, he's from Nebraska. Then on Thursday, John Anderson will be in. John Anderson from Lutheran Church of Hope City Branch, and we always look forward to him being in. And then Friday, we have a best of show. So that's the rest of the week here live on The View from a Pew on 99.3 KTIA. Al Lorenzen has been our guest today. He's the CEO of WildwoodHillsRanch.org. You serve about 1,000 at-risk children every year and try to get them back on track through programs that are centered inside of a relationship with Jesus. You're adding $1 million facilities. How can the listener out there help?
Well, there's a variety of ways. First and foremost, we add people to our prayer wrangler team all the time. We want and we need your prayers, and so certainly that's something. And you can access anything, any way to help us, Mac, through our website. So whether it's, hey, we want to pray for you, and we want to know how specifically, what to pray for, that's available. If you want to volunteer, you can come on and volunteer. Obviously, we have two two ways you can volunteer. There's single day of service, or people that want to come down and help us build a building, or paint or build a deck or something like that. And that it's pretty straightforward. You just go on, you register online, and you come down and show up. The folks that want to,
Steve Dollenbach.
Yep.
From our group, Men Inspired, has led several groups of men down there to help you guys paint and hammer and do some things down there.
Yep, and the place is looking great as a result. And if you want to volunteer and you have a heart to help the kids, obviously that's a little bit more involved process. There's a pretty stringent screening process. We want to try to figure out and ascertain where you're at in terms of your spiritual qualifications. We want to do a background check, obviously, and have our friends at DCI help us out there. And then so that's a little bit, but we have people all the time that call up and say, hey, we want to be engaged with the kids. I have this particular skill, or I'm passionate about this. And it's amazing how that fits in and how that works. And finally, obviously, we're raising $1 million every year. So financial support is key to what we do. You can do that right online. You go to our website and you donate now. You can give as little as $5, or you can give as big a gift as you want to. You can do recurring gifts. If you can't do a lot, you can do $5 a month, $10 a month, and we have a lot of folks that do that. So
501c3?
Really, yes, we are.
Okay.
So really, any way that you want to get engaged with us, the portal in this day and age, which is common sense, is our website. Or you can just pick up the phone and call us, and that phone number is on the website, or we can give it out at 641-396-2414. That's 641-396-2414. But if you go to the website, everything you need is there.
What about the mother or the grandfather or the grandmother who's listening right now who identifies with some of the kids that come to get help from you?
Well, the reality is we deal with a lot of grandparents. We got a lot of grandparents trying to pick up the pieces and hold families together, so to speak, and really help these kids. And it's amazing how many of them will come to us. And a lot of times we'll try to get to know the situation and what we'll do. It's okay for grandparents to bring young people down. A lot of times what we'll do in that situation, and we really don't take kids outside of the scope of the program into our formal program. What we do is we let them spend time with the horses. So if you've got a 16-year-old kid that's really struggling and when it comes to addiction, we refer those kids out. When it comes to behavioral issues, anger issues, other things, that's where we'll step in, spend some time with the youngster, with the horses, get to know them a little bit, and figure out, is there a way that we can help them, or do we need to refer them on? And our staff is just amazing at doing that and discerning when we can step in and really make a difference, or when we need to make an educated referral and hand that youngster off.
Now, you talked about the young lady who is probably in a wheelchair the rest of her life because of a poor decision her boyfriend made on prom night, and you talked about Cordell. Yep. I am sure there are tens and tens, if not hundreds, of stories just like that from all different kinds of kids. Is that what keeps you going? Because there also has to be some sombering moments when you realize that no matter what you do for these kids, their home life is not going to support a change. Yeah. And they're broken inside, and they're not going to be mended by you.
There's a weight to the job, no question. What keeps us going is obviously seeing God work. But then the flip side of that is our job is also to plant seeds sometimes. And, we may not see the tree bloom and we may not see it bear fruit, but by planting that seed, we've done our part. And so sometimes it leaves you hollow at times. That's just the reality of it. But you have to take solace in knowing that you've played a part, and hopefully at some point, that child may not be ready for help now. He may not be in a position to do that, but at some point, the seed that you planted is going to grow.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll figure it out. And hey, anything I've learned in the past few years is God is he's doing push-ups right outside, and he's just waiting for me to surrender. And sometimes that's all it takes is those kids to say, enough, Uncle, I'm not going to go down the road of my brothers or my siblings or my aunt and uncles and cousins, and I need something different. And God, I turn my life over to you.
Absolutely. And we get to see, we have a front row seat to watch that happen on a regular basis. And that clearly is what we're doing. But, you do what we do because you're called to do it. And, as much as you get enjoyment and that thrill out of seeing a young person get their life on the right track, the reality is this is a calling. You don't do what we do where we do it. You know, I gave up a corner office in Capitol Square with underground parking, and I work out of a bedroom of a 60-year-old farmhouse in the middle of Madison County. Now, I have a great view, don't get me wrong. I've got a 400-acre office, which I cherish, but you don't do what we're doing unless God has called you to do it,
Right.
and that ultimately is what you hang your hat on.
And it does take a calling.
No question.
Yeah, absolutely. God put something special inside of us, those like you, Al, who are called. Thank you for doing what you do. Please come back anytime. Maybe we'll have to come down and broadcast live someday.
We would love it. Thanks for having me on.
Teach those kids how to be the next Al Roker,
That would
the
be
next
exciting.
Al Lorenzen, the next Bob Montserrat, or Father Tattoo.
Right.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We will see you tomorrow. Wednesday, it's politics. As always, Tom Coates will be here along with Will Rogers and some of the tragic decisions that the Obama administration is making as it continues to, it just seems to threaten Israel every time we turn around. We'll talk about that tomorrow live on The View from a Pew. And as always, I ask you to do one thing for this ministry, this radio broadcast, this radio network, for your family and your friends. Just do one thing tonight, please. Pray. Happy birthday, Elvis.
Good.